It's Jaws' 50th anniversary, and I'm joined by the Australian's film critic Stephen Romei, who's been back to the cinema to catch up with this movie again in preparation for it being in cinemas this weekend. Stephen, were you terrified?
I was less terrified this time than when I first saw it when I was about 10 years old. 50 years on, it is a great film. And even at my current age, there were a few moments where I jumped from my seat in terror.
Tell me about your first viewing of this movie when you were 10? That's quite old. I think I saw it when I was about 3.
It scared a lot of people out of the water, and it also led to a bit of a crackdown on sharks. Sharks did not get a good deal out of this film. When I saw it as a 10-year-old, yes, a similar feeling. We would go to the beach and you'd be more nervous about going into the water.
I still sometimes have those double basses playing in my head when I'm swimming. That ominous double note composed by John Williams, who of course went on to be the most famous film composer of our age. Let's talk first about the sound of Jaws, that signature theme of the shark that introduces the shark before you even see it. That's a big part of why Jaws is scary, isn't it?
It is, and it's also a really good explanation of what a good filmmaker Steven Spielberg, the director, is, because the sharks were robotic sharks and they simply didn't work. They were like driving terrible used cars around the street. In fact, the crew had a nickname for the film, Flaws. So Spielberg had to work around that, and the way he did it was to make the possibility of the shark the threat, the scary part. And so the sound became important in that. The well-known music, as you say, which sort of leads up to a possible shark attack, but also the use of silence. So the underwater photography is excellent, and you're looking at what we look like from a shark's point of view. You just think, how vulnerable are those legs? And Spielberg mainly uses silence, and the silence is what's scary, because the silence could be broken very soon by, 300 white teeth gnashing away at children's flesh.
Yes, there's something timeless about this film. It doesn't feel like a 50-year-old film. I don't feel like it's trapped in the 1970s. But I also think it could have been a 1940s film. There are hints of films like The African Queen to me in it, that maybe it's the very sort of Bogart-like nature of Roy Scheider. He's got the strong jaw and the kind of the mysterious style. But I think one of the differences is the sound. One of the things that Spielberg brought at the age of just 26 was this sophisticated use of the soundtrack.
With The African Queen, of course, the predator were leeches. Now, for leeches, you did not need a bigger boat. There are some kind of 40s, 50s touches to the film, particularly between the three main characters beyond the shark, which is Roy Scheider as the police chief, Richard Dreyfuss as the marine biologist, and Robert Shaw as Quint, the captain of the boat they go out looking for the shark on. And this is Spielberg at 26, well before Close Encounters, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, name them all. This was before that. He wasn't a particularly well-known filmmaker at this time. And once again, what he does so well is prepare you for the possibility of something life-threatening without needing to show it.
Let's talk about that "we're going to need a bigger boat" scene. It's actually a comic moment, isn't it?
It is. And in fact, Jaws does have comedy in it, particularly between the three men on the boat. That's an interesting scene because when they first shot it, now when they test screened that before it was released, the audience was so shocked at seeing the shark pop up that they didn't hear Roy Scheider's line. So they went back and reshot it. That's why he walks back into the wheelhouse of the boat and says the line. So that is, once again, a good bit of filmmaking responding to an audience seeing the original scene and not hearing the line because they were all going like that.
That's an interesting point about Spielberg's commercial sensibilities, isn't it? Even though he was 26 and quite raw, it's interesting that he was sophisticated enough to listen to what the audience was telling him in a test screening and then change his movie.
Well, that's right. And all people involved in the arts should be responsive to the people they're creating that art for. The film, by the way, when they started making it, wasn't expected to be a blockbuster at all. And the budget to make it was about $3 to $4 million US. It ended up costing about $9 million US, so well over budget. It went for far longer than the scheduled shoot because the robot sharks didn't work. But Spielberg stuck at it, kept making it, and at the latest numbers I've looked at, its box office returns are close to $500 million. So not a bad $9 million spent.
What are some of your other favourite scenes?
Well, one of the most interesting scenes is the shark cage dive, when Richard Dreyfuss's character, the marine biologist, goes down in a shark cage. Now, this has a really interesting Australian angle. There are some real sharks in Jaws, and they are in the shark cage scene, and they were filmed by the Australian documentary makers Ron and Valerie Taylor.
Oh, I had no idea.
And they used a smaller shark cage and a very short actor to make the sharks look bigger. But what happened in the filming of it is the shark did bust open the cage in real life. The actor got away, but there's a great line in it when one of the producers of the film said in an interview, he said, "That shark from Australia rewrote the script." And it's true. They did rewrite the film because of what a real shark in South Australia did in that one scene featuring a real shark.
Brody, the police chief, is the hero. Who's the villain?
I have to say, I started rooting for the shark.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted the shark to eat them all. I certainly wanted it to eat Quint, the Robert Shaw character, the skipper of the boat, for one reason alone, which is to stop him singing these stupid sea shanties all the way through about Spanish-eyed women. So who is the villain? Well, it's an interesting question because the film kind of unfolds in two halves. The first half is the resort town of Amity, which is fictional, but it's on Long Island in New York. And the mayor, I suppose, is the villain because he doesn't want to shut the beach. He says, "We need the summer dollars," to which the marine biologist replies, "You may as be ringing a dinner bell for the shark." So he's the villain at the start. And then the second half of the film where they go out hunting for the shark, you can make your own mind up as to who's the villain. I'm going to say it's Quint.
Well, Quint becomes absolutely obsessed with the shark, and it kind of becomes about Quint's personal battle with this particular animal, doesn't it?
It does. And I mean, one of the influences, of course, was Moby Dick, Herman Melville's novel, in which Captain Ahab is obsessed with finding the whale. And Quint and Ahab are very similar characters, and that was a deliberate kind of nod to that great novel.
Stephen, the safe place to be this weekend will be not at the beach but in the cinema watching Jaws.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.